What is art? What is literature? For the past 7 weeks, I've been using these terms to suggest the validity of comics and the importance of my mode of reading, of slow reading. Nevertheless, I think it's time I come clean. Because for many people, literature is high art. It is writing that has been consecrated both through the test of time and through the authority of the university. In this way, comics cannot be literature. They cannot quite be high art in the way we think of the great English poets. Or can they? For when I think about where comics are now, when I think through literary history and look for parallels, my mind falls to the late Middle Ages, to Geoffrey Chaucer, the great English poet of the Canterbury Tales and Troilus and Cressida. Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales. It was unfinished, but it was copied over into a manuscript, a book known as the Ellesmere Manuscript. And it is to that book that I want to turn now. I put the beginning of the Canterbury Tales, the first page of the general prologue, online for you to look at while I talk about it. I have here a souvenir from the Huntington Library. That's the library in California that owns this copy of the Canterbury Tales. And the Ellesmere Manuscript, it's about the size of a DC Absolute edition. And it's a handwritten manuscript, the most beautiful manuscript of the Canterbury Tales that we have. And it seems to be created right about the time of Chaucer's death, around 1400, perhaps a little later. The manuscript was written by one man, Adam Pinkhurst, who knew Chaucer. And it is his handwriting here that we see when we look at the beginning of the general prologue. I want to read to you here, because I think we will find a synthesis between words and images that allows the Canterbury Tales to emerge as literature, even without the weight of history or the power of the Academy behind it. Let me read. Juan that April with his showers short, the dracht of March had perched to the road, and bathed every vein in switch liqueur, of which virtue engendered is the floor. When Zephyrus eke with his sweet breath inspired hath in every holten heath the tender croppus, and the young son hath in the ram his half-course run, and small fowls mark in melody that sleepen all the nichts with open ee. So pricketh him nature in her courage, then longing folk to go on pilgrimage, and palmers for to seek in strange strands to fern hollows north in sundry lands, and spatially from every shire's end of England to Canterbury they wend, the holy bliss for martyr for to seek, that him hath holpen when that they were sick. And so begins Chaucer's great poem of pilgrimage, a story that begins in London and moves to Canterbury Cathedral, and along the way, each pilgrim tells a story in a contest of stories. But Chaucer begins not by introducing the pilgrims, but by introducing the coming of spring. Let me just translate the first few lines of this august sentence. When April, with his sweet showers, pierces to the root the drought of March, and bathes every vein in such liquor, of which engendered is flowers. So Chaucer says at the beginning of his poem that showers, sweet showers, come to the English landscape and inspire growth. I think we can see that Chaucer is talking about spring, but he's also talking about his own effort here, that he is the sweet showers, that his verse is the sweet showers. I think we can see that Chaucer is talking about the coming of spring, but he's also talking about his own efforts, that his verse is a kind of sweet shower that will come to the landscape and allow flowers, other poetic flowers, to grow. And so the poem is talking about itself. It's talking about the coming of something new and the emergent of a literary art form before there is an English canon. I would suggest that the page is aware of this. Adam Pinkhurst writes in a kind of script known as Anglican formata, the English form. And when he writes out these letters, he knows that he's writing an English poetic in an English hand. Two, as Chaucer sings of the coming of spring, the vines on the page enwrap the poem. They too speak that English arts are growing, wrapping around English letters. And the book itself has a kind of glory. This is not art as consecrated by external forces, but art made by individual people who want to express its brilliance. It comes not from the monastery nor from the academy, but from individual people who recognize the greatness of imaginative representation and capture it in a material form. Now, when we come to the Canterbury Tales, we come to text typeset in our own font, and it seems shorn of this beauty. It seems sanitized, laid out on a table as high art, literature to us. But when it actually came to England, it came as something both of letters and of page design. It came as a text in that wonderful sense that a text means a weaving of different elements, a weaving together. And so it stands on its own as a material embodiment of the imagination. And this is what comics are doing now. They stand on their own as a representational art form carried in the book. And so I say comics are literature, knowing full well that they share in the visual arts, that they are more than literature. Indeed, that they look towards some new form of literature. But literature always pushes its own boundaries, and comics are doing that now. And what is important is that they articulate the imagination in narrative and lyric. This is important because everyone needs narrative and lyric in his or her life. Everyone needs a way of expressing what is inexpressible, a way of imagining the past, the present, and the future. This is the definition of art, of the literary arts to my mind. The literary arts are a mode of storytelling and of song that express to us the inarticulate eloquence of our imagination. And so I say, anything that blocks that expression, any gatekeeper who would keep that expression away from the individual, any of that is bad, is negative, and anything that allows that expression, that allows us to explore the imagination further, is good, indeed, a great good. It is a great good because art is generative. And no matter what we face in our lives, no matter what hardships we endure, art is generative of some greater imagination beyond us. With art, there is always hope.